In our second lesson on vocabulary comprehension, we are going to discuss some of the most common prefixes that we will encounter in the words that we use. But before we look at those prefixes, let's take a moment and review what we've already learned about prefixes. In our previous lesson, we talked about how prefixes are added before a root word. And when a prefix is used, it actually changes the meaning of the word. By taking some time to know some of the most common prefixes, it will actually help you be able to determine the meanings of new words that you may encounter. The first common prefix that we are going to examine is pre. And we already learned in the last lesson that pre means before. Let's consider some words that we already know that begin with pre. For example, pre-approve, prepay, and precaution. We know that pre-approve means to get approval beforehand. Prepay means to pay up front, pay before we get. And then precaution are measures that we take before undertaking an action to ensure that we keep ourselves from danger. In this example, we're told if a star can only be seen during the pre-dawn hours, when might you be able to see it? And the options that we are given are 4 a.m. and 6 p.m. Well, what does dawn mean? Okay, dawn is when the sun comes up. Sun comes up in the morning. Based on that information, which of these times would take place before the sun comes up? 4 a.m. or 6 p.m.? In this case, it's 4 a.m. When might you prejudge a situation? Our options are once you know all the facts or before you know all the facts. In this case, we know that judge means to pass judgment about something based on facts. If we prejudge something, we are doing that beforehand. Therefore, we prejudge a situation before we know all the facts. Our next common prefix is re, R-E, which means again. So what are some common re words that we already know? Well, we know refund, which means to get money back that we've already paid. Remember, which means to bring something to mind again that we already know. And respond. If somebody asks us a question, we respond with an answer. So in other words, we are answering back. In this example, we're asked, who needs a reminder to return his library books? A person who usually remembers or a person who usually forgets? Well, if you need a reminder to do something, are you more likely to remember it or are you most likely forgetting to do it? Well, in this case, a person who would need a reminder is someone who usually forgets. Why might you reconsider a decision? Our options are because you doubt your original choice or because you haven't made a choice yet. When we consider a choice, we've made a decision. So if we reconsider a choice, we're going back and thinking through that decision again. In this case, we would reconsider because we doubt the original choice. Sub is another common prefix that we will encounter, and one with which we should already be familiar. The word sub means under. So let's think about some common words that we know begin with the prefix of sub. One of the first ones that will come to mind is subway. So unless you're really hungry and automatically think of Subway sandwiches, when we see the word subway, we know that that is referring to an underground railway transportation system. Another example would be submarine. A submarine, of course, is an underwater sailing vessel. So once again, sub means under. In this question, we're asked which might be a subtopic within a discussion of the Revolutionary War. Our options are the Declaration of Independence or U.S. history. So let's think about what those are. The Declaration of Independence, of course, is the document that was drafted and sent to England to inform them that we, as the colonies, are declaring our independence from British rule. U.S. history, on the other hand, is a broad topic that covers the entirety of the history of the United States. Which one sounds more like a subtopic? So we have the topic of the Revolutionary War. A subtopic would be something that would fall under a discussion on the Revolutionary War. Does that sound like U.S. history? Well, no. The Declaration of Independence, on the other hand, is a subtopic of the Revolutionary War because the Declaration of Independence is one of the things that kicked off our war for the Revolution. U.S. history, on the other hand, would be a broad topic, and the Revolutionary War would actually be a subtopic of U.S. history. So, our answer in this case is the Declaration of Independence. Our next prefix is mis, M-I-S. And when this one is used, it changes the root word to mean bad or wrong. Let's take a moment and think about some words that we already know that include the prefix mis. Well, we have misbehave, which of course means bad or wrong behavior. Misunderstand, which means that your understanding of something is wrong after it has been explained. And mistake. And when we make a mistake, that means we make a bad or wrong decision. Let's consider the following example. Which advertisement for medicine would be misleading? One that discusses benefits and side effects, or one that discusses only benefits? If we consider misleading as a word, knowing that mis means bad or wrong, misleading would tell me that the advertisement is trying to steer us in the wrong direction. When discussing medicine, as a consumer, before I take it, I want to know, first of all, how it's going to help me, and secondly, what are the side effects? What could potentially happen that isn't such a good thing if I take this particular medication? So, if the advertisement is going to mislead you, then it's one that would discuss the benefits but leave out the side effects. So our second option is the correct one. When are you more likely to misspeak? When you're unfamiliar with a topic, or when you know a topic well? Once again, miss means bad or wrong. When we misspeak, we say the wrong thing or provide the wrong information. Are we more likely to do that if we're discussing a topic that we really don't know that much about? Or if it's a topic that we know extremely well? In this case, you're more likely to misspeak if you're unfamiliar with the topic. So our first option is correct. Finally, we're going to look at 5 common prefixes that are related in meaning. Those prefixes are un, dis, in, im, and non. Each of these essentially mean the same thing. They could mean not, opposite of, lack of, or without. Let's take a look at some common words that use these prefixes that we already know. First, uninformed. Uninformed means that we are without information or we lack information. Dislocate. In this case, if something is dislocated, that means it's out of its proper place or not in its proper place. Invisible simply means that we can't see it, so it's not visible. Impossible refers to something that we cannot do, therefore it's not possible. And then finally, nonviolent. If we practice nonviolence, that means that we do something without the use of violence. Let's examine a few examples to see if we can determine the meanings of the words based on what we already know with the prefixes that are being used. In this example, we're asked, which country is more independent? All right? Dependent, of course, means that we require help or resources from someone else. So independent would be the opposite of that. So, is an independent country one that controls itself or one that is controlled by another country? Well, if the country is not dependent on help from anyone else, that means it's in control of itself. So our first answer is true. Let's look at one more example. When you are likely to have a disagreement with someone, are you going to share the same opinion, or are you going to have different opinions? Well, if we think what the word agreement means, that means that we agree with each other. We have the same opinion on a subject. If we disagree, that means I have one position and somebody else has another, or I have one opinion and you have another. So therefore, you're likely to have a disagreement when you have different opinions.